Hi everyone, I am Dr. Malaika K. Fowler of Malaika International, seeking to make all lives actualize and inspire through kind actions. I am passionate about inspiring change through interconnectedness and taking compassionate actions towards our fellow human beings. Today, I like to take on the conversation I like to talk about compassion. Why not? Why not? I want to ask you several questions before I come into the face of compassion and being explicit as to my place. I said to you, I am passionate about inspiring change through interconnectedness and taking compassionate actions towards our fellow human beings. I want to ask you this question. I do want to ask you this question. What are you saying today? What are you saying today to your children, family members, loved ones, friends, or your acquaintances? Are you claiming that you dislike X, Y, Z? And X, Y, Z could just be about just anyone. It's just there for an example. People, are you claiming that you dislike XYZ person, people, because they are less fortunate than you are, or what they look like, or who they are in society, because you lack compassion for yourself and not being able just to see beneath that unspoken words of yours, to accept everyone for who they are, regardless of their class, race, or differences. Are you also promoting hate instead of love? Are you refusing to connect with your fellow human beings because you lack the moral ability to be courageously? That moral ability to courageously shut down those of your tribes who are belittling others, who might think they are better than others. Are you trying to fit in with the pack, to appear powerful and worthy? Are you in a state of unworthiness, with an illusion that misrepresent a twist of rejection against your own human souls and that of others? You know, whenever we find ourselves in the place of bad muffin people, that's exactly what happens. So here's my question to you. Are you in a state of unworthiness, with an illusion that misrepresent a twist of rejections against your own human souls and that of others? Because that's when that happens. What is your stance on your own human soul? How do you stand on yours? What is it that you believe about yourself? That is the first question to ask. That's what I mean. What is your stance on your own human soul? Are you willing? Are you willing to go inside of your superficial vanity and clear out expired artifacts that contaminate your valuable souls? I'll ask that question one more time. It's very different, but it's so deep. I want you to reflect upon this very question. Are you willing to go inside of your superficial vanity? And I want you to think about if you are ready to clear out expired artifacts that contaminate your valuable souls. Souls. Are you wondering why you are a part of this world and why you share similarities with other human beings, regardless of their background or who they are? At that face, you may be a CEO, you may be an XYZ, but you are no different from someone who is a living and breathing human being. You are no different from someone who's on the street. The difference is that you have that disadvantage to be there. But are you going to look down upon that person because you are there? Now, are you going to talk to that person because of their ups and downs and their perhaps beknownst to themselves to be where they are? Are you going to beat them down? I want you to think about this tonight and today, tomorrow, day after, whatever time you live on this planet. Have you taken into consideration and asked yourself why I or you might have been handed the torch ahead of those you might look down upon? Boy, have you thought about this? Have you thought about how fortunate you are and why you have a light going ahead? Why do you think you have that light in your hand? Do you think you just have it to find your way, not to help others find their way? I want to ask you this. Are you utilizing the torch given to you to guide those less fortunate? But instead, you are unkind, finger pointing, and promoting hate and resentment. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no denial about that. I see that every day of my life. I experience that every day of my life. Didn't mean that I thought that persons were not good, but sometimes power comes to the head and they lack compassion because they don't understand who they are. Because if they understood who they are, they simply will extend and lift the torch out and make sure that it lights for others to accept, to allow that person to know, I'm here to extend the courtesy of simple kindness. Ladies and gentlemen, compassion has several definitions. Compassion, simple kindness. Compassion is doing unto others as you would have them doing unto you. But compassion is also an awesome burden in that you are accepting ownership for the outcomes of others, whether good or bad. And that is a space that a lot of us do not want to be, because there's so much that we have to deal with on a daily basis for our own lives that we don't have the time, we think we don't have the time to be able to take the burden of others, to be compassionate. But you would never understand until you finally join the club. And joining the club is cliche to say. It's a cliche way of saying it. But instead of saying join the club, perhaps it's to say join the world and become a resourceful person where your being is being recognized and is here for a purpose. It can lift one to incredible emotional highs or bring one to depressing lows. And you are not in the business of your being to bring anyone to a depressing lows. Your task in this world as a human being is to incredibly lift a person emotionally high, to bring them to fruition, to a place where they can recognize themselves as human beings and souls of this planet. Compassion. Compassion is valuable. It is a valuable ingredient of interconnectedness and is rooted in love and care for our what? Our fellow human beings. This is what I'm going to give as an example. Everyone knows about it. I really thought about what is it that I can bring as an example that is not in depth to my spiritual world, but that all of you can understand. So let's take this for an example, okay? We have an electrical. Think about it. Just think about this. Just as the case, just as is the case with a plug and an electric outlet. Neither matters without the other. You know why? Because if you don't plug your computer, nothing fires. If I don't plug XYZ, nothing fires up. So think about what I just told you. Is interdependent, and then is interconnections with these two things. Is a electrical outlet and a plug that I have to plug a computer that fires my computer before it gets started, or I could get a full battery and then it wears out, and if it does, I have to put it in a electrical outlet to get what? I have to get a charge. I have to put in a plug. So compassion is a form of mutual dependence if one gives it that thought. You know, there most often is a presence of willingness and ability on one side of compassion and need of desperation on the other side, because each of us a balance here for compassion. I want compassion, you want compassion, someone is desperate for compassion, I can give it. When you think about it, it becomes a willingness. That ability, that willingness and ability on the other side of compassion and need of depression, from where? From the other person. Probably, maybe, let's look at it. Perhaps, maybe, most of us at different points in our lives, but let's say lifetimes, that'd be better to say, occupy the space of being compassionate, as needing compassion, depending on what is going on with our existences at the time. You know, I have lived and experienced a lot more in life, travel and have seen. Sometimes it's only when we hit rock bottom It's only at that point in time we seek to know, want to know that we can be helpful to life, society, and other people. But sometimes you don't have to wait for that point. You need to live your life on a daily basis by extending love, respect, dignity, and compassion to your fellow human being. Do not wait. Do not wait until you are, a lot of people wait. Lots of people wait because of the ingredients of compassion. Lots of people wait until they are in a situation that they have no control over, and they realize that they have to be kind. You don't have to wait for that space of compassion to be kind to people. You don't have to be desperate to be kind. You need to always, even if you went to the grocery store, you can extend compassion to someone by simply looking at them. You got 20 things in your cart. They got just 2-3 things in their hands. You could just let them go ahead of you. I've been several times to the grocery store, and I've allowed many people to go ahead of me, but not one day someone ever allowed me to go ahead. And sometimes I stand there wondering, should I continue it? Yes, I will. You know why? Because that's what life is about. My compassion is not, it doesn't dictate to me about what others say I should do. It's what I know that feels better for me. Okay? So sometimes there's more often is the presence of willingness and that ability on one side of compassion. And then sometimes, like I was trying to talk about, that desperation, where sometimes we find ourselves in situations that we think we have to, probably, maybe, most of us at different points in our lifetime occupy a space of being compassionate, and you definitely will get to that point, as well as needing compassion. There will be a point where you don't need it. There will be a point where you actually really need it, and that's going to be depending on what's going on in your existence and your time. So you know what? Today you are happy, tomorrow you really don't know. That's what makes what life is. Life is an unpredictable space. It's a place where we can be here in the now. That's what we ask you to be in your now. Because you know here where you are, but you don't know whether you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and be a human being, or perhaps be an expired person. And that phase of compassion, because there's different points in our lives that sometimes we need and we want to occupy the space of compassion, or we need it, or we might want to depend on people for it. So what am I going to say to you tonight? I want you every day of your life to live a life of being compassionate. And being compassionate is free. It doesn't even take you energy. Actually, being compassionate is what it does to your psyche. It increases something about endorphin in your state of being. You become it's like you're taking a pill because you're depressed, because you're helping someone. And what do I mean by that? Let's get this correct here, okay? When I say you're taking a pill because you're depressed, the minute you extend the courtesy of compassion to a person, it's like you've taken the pill of human existence. You have extended to someone a phase of humanity, of helping someone. Your life, the inside of you lights up. Naturally, science talk about this over and over. Okay, so let's move on to something. So we all float. Let's assume that we all float in the sea of humanity. We are all swimming. We are all swimming. And the reason why I said that we all float, because we are given what we call a life vest. There's a point where that life vest will be taken away. But we are all floating. We are all floating in the sea of humanity. Some of us occupy what? Some of us, even though we all are on this big sea, we're on this big water, we're floating. We've been given the vest to live. But some of us have something better than the others. You know what I mean? So some of us occupy a yacht. Most of us might have an average boat while others float along crew raft. That is something to think about. And those example was ingested for a purpose. So even though I want you to think we're all floating on this beautiful sea, and some of us have a privilege to have X, Y, and Z, even though rising tides lift all of us, and if we say rising tides lift all of us, let's say rising tides will lift all of the ships that are on that water to port, okay? So let me kind of play around, not direct, cold, paraphrase, mix up with everything here. President Ronald Reagan. So think about this. President Ronald Reagan, the yacht and the boat owners still, he said the yacht, the boat owners still have a massive advantage over those floating on the raft, even when the water rises. Okay. I picked that for a purpose. I'm speaking to an audience and an audience around the world. Here we are. So here, I want you now, let us bring compassion here, because here, it becomes a willingness in this space as I spoke about. That willingness in that space, okay? So some of us, even though some of us, we are as humanity, there is a sea of humanity. And that sea of humanity, we all will float on top of that water. None of us going to drown, because there is a ecosystem that provides for all of us a floating mechanisms. And that floating mechanism puts us all out there. But something's going to happen. There's some people who's going to go have a boat. Some people going to have a yacht. And some people alone things are going to be a little different. So what I'm asking you here, even though there's going to be some rising tides that comes to lift each of us up, and even on that sea of humanity. And what is that sea of humanity? We all are human beings. We all are in a place. We all are portier. We all occupy something. Some of us get ahead of each other. That is the sea that I speak about. Why did I want to bring that sea of humanity? It's very important, because we are not going to drown. The reason we're not drowning is only because we are all given some equality to an extent. And that equality that we're given to an extent makes us and put us on the path of beginning to understand that we are human beings, and we can sometimes rise to be whatever we are. Well, let's go back to this place. So here we are. So we're all existing on this sea of humanity. But some people went out and they occupy a yacht. Some people went and occupy an average boat, while others float along crew raft, So we have rising tides that probably could lift ships up. And that's what and President Ronald Reagan said. Well, ladies and gentlemen, take this into consideration. The yacht and the boat owners still have a massive advantage over those floating on the raft. Even when the water rises, okay? So no one there is better than the other in some point. In some ways, maybe some if you have a ship, if you have XYZ, There's some disadvantage to an extent. But compassion is the willingness and that ability to the yacht and boat occupant to truly care and accept ownership for the outcomes of those floating on raft. Woo! That's deep. I'm gonna let the notes and the silent explain that. If you have a question about that right in that space, I love to engage with you. Send me a question. Are you grateful for your yacht or boat? And do you use your gratitude to fuel your compassion to do your best for those who are at a disadvantage? Are you entrenched in the causes in your fellow human beings to the extent that you care not to let them drown? If so, you may exemplify compassion. If not, you might wish to ask yourself what you want your legacy to be long after you've left this earth. There may be a better time than now to ask this deep question to yourself, and I want you to take into consideration that responsibility that you can ask yourself. Whatever clarity you need, I'm open to respond to you, answer your questions. I have a sense of my website. You can always email me. Let me ask you this. Is compassion truly what it is? What have you added to the mixture? What are you infusing? What societal norm are you accepting even though you recognize the reality and the limit put upon its true meaning? What are you going to do? Define your being as a way to fit in or become a contributor? I'll give you a very short story about compassion. Compassion, I believe, is simple kindness. And I'll give you a very short story. And I want you to take this with you. And this is almost, it's been almost about 18 some years ago. I worked at an international airport in the United States of America. And I have worked this job about 2-3 years. I came from a place where compassion is a currency. Compassion is a currency. Kindness is a currency. You have nothing but to be nice and compassionate to your fellow human beings. No one has anything but self-love. No one has anything but self-reliance. No one has anything but to give back to people with simple kindness. So I was working at this international airport in the United States of America. And my job was to go to work every day, and part of my human purpose was to make sure that I was fulfilling that human purpose to extend simple kindness and compassion to others. I was raised to believe that my being compassionate was a way that you get blessing. And so, long story short, I heard on the radio that there was a lady who had traveled from another city to another city. I don't want to call names. And she had done number 2. She had feces on herself. She urinated and feces on herself. And what they were going to do was to wheel her in the corner and wait until her son arrived to take care of her. From my place in life to reserve and preserve her dignity. I heard the radio message. I had a radio and I heard the communication that she was going to be wheeled in the corner and they were waiting for her son who would have arrived 3-4 hours later. I immediately went down to that receiving gate and I said, "Hi, I'm here to pick up the passenger in the wheelchair who have basically feces and urinated on herself." And she said, "You sure?" I said, "Sure, I'm sure." She said, "Well, we're waiting for her son." But what I did, just because I wanted to be sure I was not an infringement of anything with the company or anything I was doing other than ordinary, I asked her, I said, "Is it okay if I was willing to clean her?" She said, "Go ahead, it's all yours." And so I wheeled this 75 years old woman to a place, and I knew this place was a seclusive place. It was the place of the managers where they went upstairs to probably relieve themselves, and I knew this bathroom was a private bathroom. So I got into the bathroom, but I knew I couldn't do this alone. So I got on the radio, for the company, and I called a very good friend of mine who started working a year later, and she also is from Africa, and she and I speak similar language, French and so forth. So I called her. The beautiful thing about it that she was already working in the healthcare industry. In fact, a few years later, she is now today a doctor of pharmacist. So I called Annie, and Annie came, and Annie looked at the situation. She said, "Are you willing to do this?" She said, "I know how to do this, but if you're willing to do this, I am all with you." I said, "Sure." So she said, "I need A, B, C, D," and I went out and asked the manager. I would refer to her as an initial C. And she provided everything for us. She asked us if that's what we wanted to do. We said yes. We went ahead. We started the process. At the minute we started this process, Annie, who's in the health field, noticed something that I really didn't know about. And she said, "Well, I have to call the authority to report XYZ." And I'm like, "Oh my God, what is this?" Of course, I'm all new to everything. And she tried to explain to me the situation. Of course, this 75 years old lady suffering from Parkinson's disease, who had did number 1 and number 2 on herself, who would have sat to the gate and waited for her son. This lady has been abused by her daughter, and we didn't even know there was a custody battle between her son and her daughter. But here is Annie, who is a healthcare professional who understood the nuance about saying abuse and had to call on it. And she said, "We are going to go about doing this, but we have to call the right authority to handle the situation. I see something that I need as an ethical aspect of the healthcare. I need to make this known." I asked her what it was. She pointed out to me this lady daughter with smoke on her and put the cigarette butt. I've never seen that in my life because I've never smoked. And Annie pointed all the abuse to me and so forth. Anyway, we waited for them to come, and they did an inspection. We continued cleaning her. But we were only in my life, I felt we were extending compassion. We also were preserving the dignity of this woman, this 75 years old woman. It wasn't that I wasn't being sensitive to myself that I could not handle this. In fact, I felt a lot of strength. I felt so much strength that it was my duty to do this, and Annie felt the same way. I also felt the essence of compassion. because I used to live every day as I worked to the airport and meeting hundreds of people a day from both international and national flights. It became an essence that I wanted to live every day and extend simple kindness. I empathize with what was going on. Why should anyone ever have to go through that and be abused by their own children or child? My deep appreciation was awakened inside of me. My 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 inner something inside of me wouldn't let me leave the situation the way it was. Anyway, we brought awareness to the situation. Behold, did we know that the son and the daughter were having a custody battle with who would take the mom, and it appears that the daughter was in more control of the brother, but the mom was visiting the son in the United States. It's the same North America, and and um, and when we called that, we had the authority, the rightful authority involved. I'm not going to go through all of that explanation to give you the different nuance and so forth. But Annie today is a doctor of pharmacy. Annie today, she always have worked in a healthy, very bright person. And she said when the minute we started and she saw it, she ethically knew that it had to be a third party involvement. It wasn't going to stop her, but she wanted to make sure that she was doing what was necessary for what she had learned in her medical field. Ladies and gentlemen, not only we extended compassion, Annie Icobina and I extended compassion to this lady, but we changed the life of her life. 75 years old woman at the end of her life. Why? Because we just didn't take our disadvantage so for granted and thought, oh yes, we worked there, let her just sit and wait for her son. No. I went down and I brought her. I connected with someone who I thought knew about what was going on. And truly, the connection of connecting with Annie Icobina is because at that point in time, Annie definitely had the background in the healthcare system. She had worked several things to have understood that phase before she became a doctor of pharmacy. So it isn't like others were there and I didn't call it, but I went and picked up a connection with someone who knew could help us in a face of compassion. We weren't afraid to stand up to do what was right. We extended simple kindness. We expected nothing in return. Perhaps the only thing we would have gotten, we thought, was a thank you. We did not know that we have changed the life of the beautiful old lady name I could call here tonight, but I will keep that for reservation. We changed the life. A few weeks to a month later, we received this beautiful letter that thanked us. Thank us. But before I go to that point, let me just fast forward. No, rewind. That would be the best way to say. When Annie and I was done cleaning this beautiful old lady in that bathroom, it took us several hours because we had a lot of formality to go through. Once Annie recommended all of the medical necessity for what she had seen and what she had to make a claim of. When Annie and I were all done, this lady held my hand, held the hands of Annie, and she cried and told us that we were her angels, that we have made her life different, even though she had Parkinson's disease, and perhaps you might just say that she wasn't able to respond, but she knew, she felt that dignity. She was dignified at that moment of herself. As I end compassion and the many questions I asked you, I do want you to reflect upon my message. I want you to go out on a daily basis and seek to be compassionate to your fellow human beings. I want to thank you for yet another video, and have a very beautiful day. Goodbye.